Hello, my name is Alistair and I am the Bad Mini Painter. Now, the Tyranids was the first army I actually started on after my return to Warhammer about 4 years ago. I always had a weakness for the little bugs, and now with the new Leviathan box coming out, I decided to rekindle my love for the little buggers. So a Tyrant Guard is actually something I don't have in my collection already, and I decided to pick one up and paint him in the Leviathan colors scheme. Now the Leviathan skin is something that has really pissed me off. Trying to create it like it looks on the box art has been somewhat near impossible for me, but I think I'm pretty close to cracking the code. So what I do is I base with Kislev flesh, which is a fairly pale but still kind of warm skin color, and then I dry brush with the Prasetti white, which is a warm kind of grayish white dry brush paint, which means that it will break and dry out within 2 seconds of buying the pot, but still, you know. And I dry brush fairly generously with it, so I don't wipe the brush that much. I think it gives a nice effect. Afterwards I went in with Violet from skill 75. It's a kind of a matte but highly pigmented purple, and I decided that would be good for a base color. It's a little bit too light, but that's okay because we're going to be darkening it down quite a bit. I have more or less totally given up on matching the box art when it comes to the carapace of the Tyranids. Afterwards I go in with the sunset purple and I do some streaking in the bottom and top of the carapace. You can see the finish on the violet is fairly matte. But the good thing is that means it won't become overly shiny after the wash, which is an issue I've had before. And I generally just go around the carapace and do these little streaks to try to make it look like it's kind of organic or worn. So that's the part of the carapace that will get scratched up and worn out. And as soon as I've been all over with that, I go with the Drushi Violet wash, and I give it a fairly liberal coat, which will darken everything down quite nicely and give it this a little more warm violet color. And of course, as always, when you're using especially Citadel washes, is to wash for pooling. This is not the worst of their washes, but it does like to pull. And the pigments act, well, really good if you want to do a lot of shadowing, but the way that the pigments behave in the medium makes it very pool ready. Gene Stealer purple for some more lines. You can see everything has been darkened down quite a bit, which will make the contrast for the next part that more vibrant. And I generally do the same thing as I did with the sunset violet, just not going down quite as far. As you can see, after doing the wash, it has added kind of a gradient between the violet and the sunset violet. It gives a nice look. And it is just going all over the model, trying to add the streaks and striations, laying it on a little thick. And it's a nice effect. Next I go in with the Slanesh Grey and I try to do thinner lines, more separated. These lines are a little bit too thick for what I was actually going for, but it's nothing that I can't correct. But this is much better. It's generally just a question about controlling how much paint you have on the brush, and if you water it down a little bit, it will make it easier to do thinner lines. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the end result. And again, everywhere I did the gene sealer, I will go and do these lines as well, to kind of indicate deeper scratches. It is kind of tedious, but I feel like the reward is fairly high when you look at the end result. To end up, I do a little bit of edge highlighting for all the sharp corners on the carapace, sharp edges, and that's with the Slanesh Grey as well. And I try to go all over with it. Now it's a Mephiston Red for the claws and the hooves and nails, claws. And I use Pink Horror for the deep scratches, wounds in the carapace. It's a nice little detail. I almost forgot it, and it wouldn't be a me video if I didn't forget something. But this time I remembered that part. And I use red tone from the Army Painter, which is a fairly awesome but pretty glossy wash. And I use that for the claws and hooves and basically everything that is red. It's also nice because it can fill in the gaps where I got sloppy with the Mephiston Red. You don't want to use too much of this stuff because it is pretty glossy. But I think for the claws it's actually a nice effect when it's done. And a good red wash is actually fairly hard to find. I'm using one of my more beaten up Citadel brushes for this. Next it's Carroburg Crimson. And that is for the vents and all the joints on the Tyranid. And I'm just careful trying to not hit the skin too much. Generally I just go and try to cover all the crevices. I will do a bit of cleanup afterwards with this because yeah, it's difficult not getting it on the skin. And to avoid pooling, I try to add a dab and then spread it out as much as possible. So I will give that some time to dry, and then I will come back in with the cold white from Badajo. And I do highlighting with this, and also try to fix wherever I messed up with the washes. Cold white is, as the name implies, a cold white color, so it's pretty good for highlighting the skin of the Tyranids. It contrasts well against the dry brushing, and it will dull down a bit when it dries. And for the last little bit, I will highlight with Wild Rider Red for the claws and hooves and nails and whatever good stuff this bugger has going on. And it's just a basic edge highlight. I could have gone in and freshened up a little bit with Mephisto Red as well, but I kind of like the look of the claws, so I just want to kind of dull the edges a little bit and add some highlighted areas where the light would catch it. And finally, I'm using what's called Martian Earth, something like that. Martian Crust from Citadel Texture Paint. That's the theme I have with all my little bugs. And the end result looks like this. And I would say I'm fairly happy with it. And when you look at it from a distance, like when it's on the table, it looks pretty much okay. Yeah, I guess it looks okay. But sometimes okay is good enough, right? Anywho, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Maybe there was some stuff in it you can use, and if not, then well, I'm sorry, but thank you for your time. And hopefully I will see you next week for another painting, not tutorial, but video. Yeah, another painting video. Yeah, let's go with that.